Ukrainian ambush destroys 71-vehicle Russian armored convoy. Massive battlefield victory.
Go, go, go. July 25th, 2025. It is exactly 9:50 in the morning. A huge Russian armored convoy of 71 vehicles is advancing confidently. Their goal is to collapse the Ukrainian lines with a sudden raid. However, Ukrainian drones and intelligence have already detected the Russian convoy. While the drones tracked a Russian convoy, Ukraine's Leopard and T-72 tanks waited in ambush. Marder infantry fighting vehicles took their places. Drones monitored the situation, and Paladin artillery waited for the command to fire. 25 minutes later, dozens of Russian tanks, armored vehicles, buggies, motorcycle infantry, pickups, and rescue teams were completely engulfed in explosions. Russian T-72 tanks, BTRS, MTLB vehicles, and pickup trucks were preparing for a two-pronged assault. It was not difficult to detect the sound of the heavy Russian armored convoy from two directions. In other words, the Russian convoy was unaware of what it was actually facing. However, the Ukrainian side was continuing its surveillance activities on both fronts 247, as they had been waiting for such an operation from the Russians. When the huge convoy of 71 vehicles slowly began to emerge from two directions, the Ukrainian army's electronic warfare, signal interception, and air surveillance networks were simultaneously alerted. The Ukraine Brigade's Vidra 3 wideband scanner detected engine harmonics north of Verna-Kamyanka. These were the noises of Russian tanks. Meanwhile, the Ukraine Mechanized Brigade's R168 smart pen station recorded a 3-layer increase in Russian data traffic on a frequency mimicking a mobile phone, when these two warnings came independently of each other. The emergency panel at the brigade's Joint Command Center lit up red. At the same moment, the Mechanized Brigade's intelligence officer launched a PD-2 fixed-wing reconnaissance drone that was waiting 100 meters away. Within 7 minutes, the drone was pulled back to the old mining road connecting Verno-Kamyanska to Donetsk at an altitude of 700 meters. The IR sensor first spotted a chain of civilian pickup trucks with their headlights off on the asphalt rubble. Immediately afterwards, it transferred the tracks entering the pine shadows from the forest line on the Luhansk side to the thermal map. When the data was combined, the attack pattern became clear. Russian forces were advancing in a semi-organized manner, hiding 6 T-72 tanks behind camouflage. Following this, 3 BTR-82A personnel carriers, 6 MTLB tracked tow trucks, and a BRM recovery vehicle were forming a support line. The second column included 12 civilian Toyota and Gao pickup trucks with double cabins, 2 buggies with steel frames, and 41 motorcycles. The motorcyclist backpacks contained ESM jammers to counter lightweight UAV detection radars, while the pickup truck beds carried Igla MANPADS cases, FN MAG heavy machine gun adapters mounted on tripods, and artillery smoke grenade launchers. At this point, it became clear that the convoy was not just passing through, but was playing a tactic of infiltration, short-range raid, and retreat. Once the convoy's route was finalized, Ukrainian forces decided to launch the operation. The dusty mining strip at the entrance to the Donetsk line, the meeting point at the Verno-Kamyanka-Verno-Kamyansk intersection, and then a detour to Seversk. The purpose of Russia's 71-vehicle armored convoy had been revealed. The decision was likely made within the first 10 minutes by the Ukrainian military. An assault force group and a 2-axis ambush plan were prepared to the northern bloc, i.e., the line of tanks, BTRs, and MTLBs in Russia's convoy, a Leopard 2A6 tank battalion, 3 Marder 1A3 armored personnel carriers, 6 civilian Furia FPV operators, and the 1st and 3rd batteries of the Paladin M109A6 howitzer battery were deployed. Additionally, a pair of Switchblade 600 kamikaze drones were also part of the operation. The Ukrainians deployed the second section of the Paladin, 4 Martyrs, 8 FPV teams, 2 Bayraktar TB2s, a PD-2 reconnaissance drone, and a Shark tactical mini UAV to the southern sector, where Russia's massive armored convoy of 71 vehicles, including pickup trucks and motorcycles, was located. Additionally, a Stinger MANPADS team was deployed to the same area. 2 pilot observers who had received tank hunting training at the 81st Brigade were assigned to the Leopard unit. These observers would mark the explosion sites, and the Leopards would input preset tank lines into their thermal sights. The course of the operation was becoming clearer. The artillery commander allocated the Paladin systems with the Excalibur precision-guided 155mm round, the HDP ICM cluster variant, and the standard HM107 round. 7 Excalibur rounds, 5 DP ICM rounds, and 6 M107 rounds were programmed for the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd formations respectively. The Paladin's firing table reduced the maximum deviation on a 6,500-meter straight line to 19 meters. The satellite-linked artillery program pre-cross-linked the TB2 laser designator frequencies. 3 Marder 20mm machine guns were loaded with tungsten core ammunition. 1 Marder carried a 30mm rocket-propelled grenade RPG launcher on its shoulder line. 16 explosive drones equipped with 1.5 kilogram EFP payloads. 8 drones with 2 kilogram thermoric payloads and 6 Switchblade drones were prepared and attached to the underside warning attachments with Idle-Mac Frisbee charges. The Shark reconnaissance drone was equipped with a CL-105 thermal camera for navigation. Spare batteries were installed in the PD-2. The JTAC laser code of the TB2s was integrated into the Paladin system. All preparations were complete, and it was now time for action. As the artillery battery commanders waited for the command to fire, the drone footage showed the first tank passing through the thick pine shadows of the Luhansk forest road. White steam billowing from its engine, the upper plate of its armor glistening in the sun. The Leopard battalion's reinforcement tank loaded the firing line. The OP observer clipped the sensor on the turret cover, entered 2,100 meters into the ballistic computer, and by the time the L-55 Sabot core exited at 1,650 meters per second, there was no escape window for the target. The first Sabot created a shower of explosive light on the muzzle ring of one of the Russian T-72 tanks coming from Luhansk. The internal explosion in the turret converted the ammunition rack into a high-calorie fire at 12 bar pressure. The second sabot pierced the diesel tank of another Russian T-72 tank, and the fuel mixed with the derivative smoke and ignited. The third tank in the convoy entered the fire cone drawn in front of it on its tracks, took the Sabot, and the lower panel of the hull was broken, and the side plate fell to the ground like leaves of ash. 5 Russian main battle tanks between 4 and 6 meters were torn into pieces. The line of tanks suddenly became a column of flames and smoke, while the MTLB behind them was covered in grayish smoke. Now it was time to deal with the armored carriers, pickups, motorcycles, and buggies coming from the southern line. The BTR-82S took up a pointed nose position and brought their 30mm cannons into firing mode, but they couldn't find a clear shot at the Martyrs. The Martyrs were only raising their 20mm guns from a defile position on the edge of the canal. The first howitzer of the Paladin battery fired an Excalibur. It broke just 30 meters in front of the BTR line, and the explosion turned the BTR commander's hatch into a pile of scrap metal. The fragments shattered the optical modules. The second Excalibur struck the rear MTLB's track, shattering the lower hull. The hit MTLB sank into the forest soil like a log. As the forest line turned into a smoke bomb, the Ukrainian FPV team advanced 8 drones. 4 drones in ref manual mode targeted the tank turrets. 2 targeted the upper armor of the overturned BTRS. And 2 EFP-loaded drones dove into the engine cover of the third tank, whose tracks were jammed. As the area turned into a ring of fire, the Martyr gun fired 500 rounds at the 14mm sidearm armor of the burning MTLB, with armor fragments melting like tinfoil. On the southern front, the Beradar TB2's laser targeted a pickup truck carrying an Iglam manpads case. The Paladin's DPICM round struck the box directly, and the hundreds of pellets buried the box in the pickup bed. The pickup deployed by the Russian army turned into a ball of fire. The heatwave shocked the pickup driver who blocked the road, causing the buggy behind him to brake and the line of civilian pickups to break. The front of the motorcycle column slammed on the brakes, causing a chain reaction of rear-end collisions. At that moment, the Paladin fired its second DPICM round into the cloud of motorcycles behind it. The ball bearings pierced the unarmored bodies like dry leaves. Half of the 41 motorcycles were knocked over instantly. The ATV-like buggy tried to escape forward, but the Shark drone performed a Switchblade 600 dive after the camera marker. The 600-gram H-frag warhead hit the buggy chassis. The maneuver turned sideways at 50 kilometers per hour, and the rear fuel tank exploded. Smoke rose like mercury from the hot fire. The Russian command, lining up the motorcycle riders like they were on a rope, was about to issue a full reorganization order when the second wave of the FPV drone swarm arrived with 6 drones. One of the drones dove into the pickup truck drivers and exploded from above. Another drone slipped through the lid of the IGL missile case and entered it. It fired the IGL rounds directly with explosives, and the missile engines had a short explosion. The pickup truck was thrown 3 meters to the side, and the truck tipped over and rolled. The ammunition in the truck bed turned into a fireball on its own. The E-band radio solution showed that there were at least 3 82mm mortar shells in the pickup truck bed. In the explosion, the mortar barrels flew off, and the remaining motorcycle riders in the convoy fled in all directions, thinking they were caught in a curse. The mortar gun stopped some of the fleeing riders with 20mm rounds. When the others veered into the field, the Paladin fired classic HM-107 rounds, tearing up the ground. The remaining pickup trucks of the Russian armored convoy were buried in dust and smoke. The switchblade dive ended. The pickup driver collapsed in shock at the wheel, and the Igla operator was caught in a pressure sweep in the ditch he had jumped into. The 2 MTLB vehicles remaining on the Luhansk line entered the sidelines to escape in the first 5 minutes, but their tracks sank into the marshy ground. Zelyzhnikara infantry team opened fire on the BMP-1 armored vehicle to prevent it from calling for rescue. An RPG-7 VR rocket embedded itself in the MTLB chassis roof. The engine oil caught fire at 900 degrees Celsius, and the crew members were ejected from the vehicle. The second MTLB was hit by a mortar gun and an FPV chain, breaking 3 of its tracks. At this point, civilian observers in a distant village could see the smoke plumes from 10 kilometers away, and the Russian armored unit looked like a pile of brown burnt leaves in the air. The engine fire had been extinguished in the only surviving hull of the 3 BTRS, but the turret was damaged. The driver requested a reverse maneuver, but as the turret loader climbed the antenna tower, sniper fire struck his leg, causing him to cling to a tree with no hope of rescue. The Brem recovery vehicle, upon entering the flames, had its crane boom melted, and the diesel tank had cracked due to explosive fumes, leaving no usable parts on the ground. The scene observed from the outside was clear. 6 tanks in the armored convoy sent by the Russian army toward Luhansk and Donetsk had been turned into fireballs. 3 BTRS had overturned, and 6 MTLB vehicles had been reduced to red and black ash. Additionally, the rescue vehicle in this armored convoy had been destroyed, and the forest was filled with smoke, with fallen tree trunks scattered on the ground and Leopard tank tracks glowing in the smoke along the canal bed. Meanwhile, on the Donetsk front, civilian-looking pickup trucks were burning on the ground, and the chaos of motorcycles had completely dispersed. Some drivers were kneeling by the roadside, while others fled by crushing the dry wheat in the fields. The 2 drones remaining from the FPV team dove down on these groups of drivers and released their fragmentation grenades like hand grenades. 3 drivers were killed in the first explosion, 2 in the second, and then 23 rows were fired from the mortar gun, leaving the remaining drivers motionless. On the side of the pickup truck, the middle beam of the truck bed was bent. The only remaining hot object visible on the TV-2 thermal camera was the metal friction heat from the broken buggy chassis, and the Paladin battery left its final DPICM round in re-attack mode. When the ballistic cloud hit the buggy, the chassis snapped in half. The operation was successfully completed, and the armored convoy of 71 vehicles had not breached the Luhansk-Donetsk line, because according to the Regional Control Report of the Tank Defense UAV Battalion, no Russian military vehicles were moving in the area. The forest area was shrouded in smoke. The air smelled of burning tires, and the terrain was deathly silent. The Russian side lost 64 of the 71 vehicles within the first 40 minutes. Of the remaining 7, 4 were destroyed. 3 were severely damaged and lost their ability to move, with personnel losses totaling 48 dead and 69 wounded, and no prisoners taken. The Ukrainian side reported 2 damaged mortar tracks, 1 Leopard side armor crack, 4 lightly wounded personnel, and the following ammunition expenditure. Paladin fired a total of 25 H rounds, 8 Excalibur rounds, 5 DPICM rounds, 6 M107 rounds, and the Leopard fired 19 Sabot rounds. Martyr fired 1,000 rounds, FPV-16 EFP thermobaric rounds, Switchblade 6, TB-20, PD-2, Shark, and Furia reconnaissance drones were in the 4th wave. Due to fewer Excalibur rounds being fired than planned, the artillery commander did not request additional logistic shipments. Following this striking operation involving the use of such military resources as the smoke was still rising in the evening, artillery observers in Seversk searched for a new tank motif on the northern line. We'll see once a vest by hour, but the area remained officially inactive. This was probably because Russian commanders realized that they would need at least 2 or 3 more days to renew their attack plan. The front line where the operation took place came to a complete standstill for a short time, with armored wrecks left to rust and corrode in the muddy ground for months to come. Thank you for watching.